Welcome back to Speaker Track. And I'm remembering to put on record. And I just shared, Sweet Lemire, we were going through Wins and Learning, and she shared that she was inspired. Her keynote is about grief, and she was inspired to go back and read her journals of her experience in that. And that is so powerful. So I encourage you to do that. Go back to your journals, go back to any notes or emails that you sent, go back and look for keywords, patterns, phrases, experiences that pop out that we just said. You will now be able to connect with your audience because of those keywords, those key experiences, and they're going to feel like you are right there, not like it was 10 years past it. One thought I noticed the other day on social media, there was a thing about origin story versus conversion story. And I thought it was a really good point that we help you dig into your origin story, but we help you focus on your conversion story. What part of the keynote is your conversion story? It's the I was X and now I'm Y. Because it's not enough to just go down memory road and then it becomes a monologue of, I went through this experience. That's not what we want to emphasize. You do your homework with your origin story and pick out those words and patterns and things, and you go, oh, that's my signature solution. That's how I got there. Oh, that's how it happened. And you see that conversion story. But when you're sharing, you're going to share just the setting, and then you're going to focus on that conversion story aspect of it. Of I was here at this time, and this is what happened, and this is what was happening, and I was X. This is my low point. And then this is what I did. The Lord helped me go to here and here and here, and then boom, before you know it, I was at Y. And I'm going to share with you the 3 tools that helped me to get from X to Y. That's the only thing that your audience is really going to care about. Otherwise, it's just Aunt June who's talking about when she was 25 and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I need to go get some dessert from the, buffet table. So I love that. Thank you so much. I want to see, and I kept wanting to skip to the origin story, which is the connection piece. Yes, it's so hard to be vulnerable and relive those memories. Yes, I literally cannot go back to my divorce journal that I wrote in the thick of when everything started to unfold. It's just, I'm not far enough away from it yet, even though I feel super confident and clear, and I don't even really think about that time much, except for when I'm preparing a talk or something. But I know I'm not ready to go back into that journal because it was just so much happening. This was the first time in probably 10 years I opened it. And I think about 8 to 10 years is probably a good amount of when you're far enough away that the words and the feelings are not just so raw. So that's really great. And if you can do it, that's awesome. But if not, I don't mind going back to my memory of what happened and things like that. And I can pull that out. And for some reason, that's just easier for me. It probably is for most of us because it's a memory that our brain has already selected and said, this is safe and you're okay. So it seems like it's just easier rather than, I don't know what I'm going to find when I open up this journal. So thank you. That's a great win in learning. Taylor, did you want to share?
Oh, yeah, mine was kind of we talked about earlier, but just shifting through. I feel like I've written like 50 different versions of my keynote because I'm like, oh, this is like way too long, or this could be its own whole keynote. And so I've just really tried to like keep narrowing it down and down again and again. And so that's been a struggle, but also a win for me to realize that I can have multiple ones as I go along.
And I love what she just put. You're exactly right. As you do these iterations, you're writing your ebook. I like to say you're writing your course because you'll do a keynote and you'll be like, oh, that's too much. I need to narrow it down. Okay, now I'm going to narrow it down. And you've just got these other keynotes of these other pieces that now you'll be able to put that into a course, and it's perfect. It's 6-8 key topics that you would want to share with them that you can't do in a keynote. A lot of times when you're writing a book, if you've had that experience, what they say is don't rewrite the first chapter. And it's so true because you're going to rewrite that first chapter probably 17 times. But the best time to write your first chapter is you write the rough first chapter. And then when you get to the end and you see how it all played out, you go back and write your first chapter again. Now you know what you really want to emphasize and the things you want to sort of red herring or the things you want to touch on so that it really provides that red thread through the whole book. So find that you'll do that the same thing. Your core keynote may come after you've done 3, 5, 7, 10 iterations. And then you'll be like, you know what? I see this pattern. And that's what I would encourage you to look for. As you do these iterations, what are the pieces that you keep coming back to? What's the section that you just can't let go, or the piece that story that you're like, I don't know where to use this, but this story keeps coming back. You'll find the place for it, but just really hone in on, these are the things that I can't let go of. And this, I don't know why, but they must have a purpose in this. So great job. Anybody else, wins in learning or a question? Diane.
I'll just be really fast. So I found myself kind of caught in this trap where I started writing and I had my keynote pretty put together. And then I started thinking, well, wait a minute, what if I want to do it for this group? And what if I want to do it for this group? And instead of writing what felt original to me and true to me, I started writing and redoing it to like fit an audience, or like, what about, and it just played with my head. And when I finally, the next day I sat down and thought, Diane, don't worry about other people, because you original.
Oh, you just went out. Oh, sorry.
Like it's got to be mine. Sorry, did I split? You guys, I know. So I've got to get like my. So I got to get my original. Like I've got to get it. It's got to come from me. I'm not writing this for other people. It's got to come from me, and then I can adapt it. But unless it's coming from my heart and like my experiences, I'm not being a people pleaser. I'm not trying to find ways to make everybody happy with my keynote. I need to make it for me and then adapt it after that, because then it will feel more original.
I love that. And I highly recommend that you do that. So you really narrow down, these are the 3 key points that I want to share, period. And just like you said, you'll adapt it as you go. Now, one suggestion that we made before is that if you were struggling getting a keynote down, start with your ideal organization. Remember, weeks ago, I asked you to choose your ideal organization you want to speak to, women's conference, a parenting conference, education week, whatever it might be. Choose your ideal conference, and you can actually imagine speaking to them if you can't get your keynote down, because that's your ideal. You know you're going to want to speak to them, and they're probably going to fit whatever you're going to share. It's going to fit with that audience, because that's your ideal. But I love this idea of this. That's the idea, is you get down this core keynote, and then it's plug and play. You're just going to take those 3 pieces and you're going to play with it. Like we do with DTLA, we have, why is purpose so important? And we make the case for why they need to know, find, and fulfill their purpose in this life, why that matters, how it impacts their life, and how it impacts it if they don't. And then the second piece is, what happens when you do fulfill your purpose? And that's when we start showcasing women in the DTL. That this is what happened when they fulfilled it. This is what happened when they fulfilled it. And we're covering things like obstacles, fear, self-doubt, the mindset piece, all of those things, in sharing those examples. And then the last one is, what are you going to do about it? What's your next right step? And then showcasing, these are the things that happen when you take that next right step. You're going to face your fear. You're going to do this. And this is the way that you can make that happen. And then bookending it with that signature story. So as I do that, I can speak to any group, and we just plug and play with those things. And what's beautiful is that a DTLA can now say, Katrina's got, deliberate family. She can now put her piece in that middle piece or that last piece. She can say, you know what, when I did this and I took the next right step, this is what happened for me. I was able to expand. I was able to become more confident in what I was doing. I was able to do blah, blah, blah. Or she could put it in the second piece. I did this and blah, blah, blah. But this is what can happen when you fulfill your purpose. Switch it. And then the third piece, she can say, what happens when other people take their next right step, and showcase people in there. So she can plug and play and still transition it to the final signature story and that call to action. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, but definitely just go with that core keynote, and please, 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 bullet point, keep it simple. Don't write out this huge keynote until you know what your 3 key pieces are. And you've got that story, that signature story that will really show, don't tell it. So when you got your 3 points that you have, like Taylor has, what's the first one? There's pivot, piece. What's the first one? Pause. So there's pause, pivot, and piece. So if she's got those 3 points, now she can go underneath and say, what's the principle I'm teaching on pause? You absolutely have to have pause, or you are not going to make it. You're going to have a heart attack. You're going to fall over, keel over one day. You're not going to be able to sustain what you need to do as a caregiver. Maybe that's that for first principle. Now she's going to do an experience that showcases that. Then she's going to do a stat that proves that that's true, or she's going to vice versa. And then she's going to share a quote, and then she's going to share a how-to thing. This is what you need to do to blah, 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 blah. to make sure that you pause in a given day. And she's not just going to make something kind of like, you really need to take a pause during the day. Like, of course, we all know that. What's the problem that they're not being able to do that? You want to address the pain point of it. How many of you feel like, yes, I know I need to take a pause right here? How many of you don't do it right there? And why is that? And you can do a slide that shows here the top 5 reasons why women don't pause during the day. Anybody experience those? Well, here's what we're going to do to make that happen. I'm going to give you the miracle of the pause. And it's this wonderful way to take a 15-minute pause in your day. And here's how you're going to do it, whatever she's going to do. But you're going to give them some signature solution. You're not just going to say, you need to do this. You're going to say, here's one way that worked either for me or someone else who found the way to pause during the day. And you could say, like, for me, she did pockets of peace. And she scheduled in 30 minutes like an appointment. And it was a pocket of peace. And it couldn't be, taken over because that was the pocket of peace. Now there's family. So 80% of the time she was able to do it, but blah, 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 whatever. But you're going to give them a little ism or a unique fingerprint solution, some signature solution, something that they'll, I'm going to try that. Even if it sounds like something that we've known for 100 years, you're going to put your spin on it so that they're going to be like, that's a fresh new perspective. I'm going to try that. I've got motivation now to try it. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions on that? Oh, thank you, cute Lamira. I'm realizing I need more help with show, don't tell. Grateful for the ideas given my outline of how to show it. So that's exactly right. Every time we can show, don't tell, it's so much more powerful. Okay, anybody else win in learning or a question? Yes.
I feel like I finally figured out how my mind works a little bit better. So Connie and I were talking last week, and we just talked about how I would have to do it off of a PowerPoint first. So do my slides first. So I kind of need to work in reverse, because if I can't have the creative aspect of it with it, I just like, it's all just words. And I love school because I love learning, but I like never turned in my homework. Like so when my kids have a problem with it, I'm like, oh darn, let's try harder, knowing full well that I didn't really, I mean, I would, but it just, I just like to learn what I wanted to learn from it. And I just didn't follow through on the rest. And so it could be a little ADD. It could be just not how I function. But so I've been working on my slides, and I feel like it's piecing together a lot better, but I'm still having so much like mental clutter, just trying to narrow it down too. So everything you guys are saying is helping me. It's just
so good. And this learning is huge, because now you'll know when you have keynote opportunities, or you're going to be teaching or doing something on YouTube or whatever, a better way for you to go about it is to just sketch it, do a slide, whatever it is, it's going to be more creative. Another thing that I would encourage you to do, if not you, the royal you, but if you ladies are having a hard time, like just sitting and typing something out or whatever, get sticky notes, little sticky notes, and put it on the wall or a whiteboard, and just start writing down a thought of, I definitely want to cover this. I definitely want to cover this. I want to cover this. And then put the sticky notes up and then put them under categories. Okay, this could go under a category. This could go under a category, and find your 3 categories. Just do it physically if you need to do that, or do 3x5 cards if that's easier for you, and with magnets. But get your 3 main categories with all those thoughts that are swirling. And even in those 3 main categories, once you've got those 3 ones, then you can go through those sticky notes and you can go, that's priority. That's a thing I absolutely need them to know. Okay, this is another one, but this is probably like, there's A, B, and C. A is like priority. B is like, would be really nice, kind of that Julie B. Beck, there's necessary, nice to do, and essential. So go through and do that with your sticky notes or your 3x5 cards or your points. And then once you've got that, just move down the B and the C ones and keep the A ones, and say, okay, which of those are the ones that I really need to cover? Otherwise, you're going to have like 25 keynotes. So it's helpful to really nail down what are the key principles I want to share. And then you can start doing the show, don't tell, and the story, the stat, or whatever. And you can do the same thing with your stories. If there's stories that come to mind, you can do the sticky notes on it and go, oh, these are like priority A stories that I want to share. These are like plum stories. they've got to be using the Keynote. And then once you see that, you can start putting little notes next to it. Okay, what categories can I put this under? Well, I've got this one story. I could do it for self-care. I could do it for gathering my family. I could do it for how to create a beautiful environment. I could use this story for 5, 6 different things. Then you can have a better idea of where do I want to plug and play my stories too. And again, you can do it in a more physical way so that it feels like you're actually making sense to your brain while you're doing it. So just a thought. I'm finding I need to write it out first and then bullet point it. I have to find my words, otherwise I sound like a brain stutter. You know what? And if it works better that way, that's beautiful. Some people really need to sift through after they've seen it on paper and then they can pull it out. Other people, it makes them crazy to feel like they've written out all of this stuff and then they're like, I don't even know where to begin. So whatever way is best for you to start, if you feel like I need to brain dump first and then sift, or if you're like, I just need to get it down to what are the top 3 things I need to share with these people so I'm not overwhelmed by all the things I could share. Either way, whatever works best for you. Great job. Yes, sir. Taylor.
So you give your hook, right? And then you go into your point and your stat. Is it weird to do another story at that point?
No, you can do a cementing story, an anchoring story. So say you've shared your principle of pause, finding your pause, and then you share a little story about how I thought I could go and go and go and whatever, you know, I just couldn't, but I crashed and I realized this wasn't sustainable. So then I realized I need to find a pause, and I'm not the only one. That you're not doing it this way, but I'm just giving an example. So then you put up the stat. Actually, 78% of caregivers actually have incredible depression and they keel over in the first 2 years with some health issue, right? So I took it to heart and I said, what do I need to do differently? And then you share the point of what you did differently. And that could be a story right there. You could share it with the story. So I started to do X, Y, and Z, and I took that thing and then I did this and I hired a sitter and boom, I had that half hour every 2 days that I could look forward to. And that was so huge. Then cement that with a quote. Women actually perform better when they take regular times to pause on a given day. They show up better, they're happier, their meals get done, and little woodland creatures come out and help them clean. It's wonderful. And then you can cement it at the end with the story. Just the other day, I was going and doing, I was getting back into that routine. I went, no, it looked like I didn't have any time, but I said, I've got to value with this. And I did. So I went and rested for 20 minutes and I could hear my kids screaming and something crashed and I just kept resting. And I came back out and guess what? Everyone was fine and it was great and the world moved and I could function and move forward. So do you see what I mean? You can add stories in there to either open it, to keep it moving and keep the momentum, or cement it, however you want to do it. A lot of times we'll use those different pieces of a quote, a thought, somebody else's story, a picture that will move it forward. So we're not just storytelling the whole time. It adds a little variety. Great question. Anyone else? Wins, learning, or question?
I have a question.
Yes.
Where is a good place to learn more about storytelling? I know you've shared things before, but can you remind us, like maybe where are some good places that we could go to learn to be better show don't tellers?
That's a great question. So I talked about Dan Clark's story selling, and it's super in depth. Like an editor should have gone through with him and said 27 points of how to story sell. It's just not helpful. It's just not. But he's also got soul food. He's got a variety of things. He is a master storyteller. Now, I will say, I love the man. And not all of his stories are true. And here's what I would say to you. Only tell true stories, okay? So I have to be really careful with what I share from Dan because I will actually say to him, is that a true story? Because there's a covenant power that comes with true stories. And if you're not going to tell a true story, or if the story is told, you lead out with it differently. You see that in conference. They'll say, there's a story of a man, right? That means we don't know if it's true, but it's a really good point that it makes. So you're going to want to introduce it that way and not act like it's a true story. Anyway, story selling. Ty Bennett has some great things on story, the power of story. There's some other books that are named The Power of Story. Talk Like Ted is a really good one for sharing how to tell the story and the storytelling aspects. I'll look and see what else I have that I have used for that. Another thing is find people that you love who tell stories. Listen to Jeffrey R. Holland talks. Whatever it is that you feel like that person tells really good stories, Brene Brown tells really good stories, find those people and then listen to how they told the stories. I love the idea that you had before where you talked about comedy, listen to comedy of how they share a story. They have to get in and get out and make the point and hit the pitch, hit it just right so that it hits that, nails that last point. So anyway, really good. Yeah, that's really good. So those are all really good too. Any other questions or wins or learning? This is so good. You guys are bringing up great stuff.
I have one more question. Is it detrimental to have too many slides and text? Like, I feel like you are really good, like at women's conference, having your slide, but then you're saying a whole bunch of stuff. You're not necessarily switching. What do you think about that?
Yes, you generally, okay. And now all of these things have a generality and then it changes. So just know in like a year, they'll probably say, do it differently. So it used to be people had a ton of slides and then they went down to like the nubs, like 5 slides. Like you couldn't do any more than 5 to 7 slides in your whole keynote. And there are people who do keynotes just like that. They're very much storytellers and they're very engaging and they only have these very important, I don't want to say graphic in a mean way or a bad way, but just more of a jumping springboard picture slide that they're going to utilize for a whole section. And so you can do that. I tend to use about 10 slides per section. So imagine 3 sections. I have an open, your hook and the open, and then your close, call to action and close. And then you have your 3 sections. I have a slide maybe or 2 for the beginning, maybe up to 3, depending on how in-depth and intense it is. Same thing for the close. And then about 10 in between, but 8 to 10, sometimes if I can get it down to 5, I will. The main things that I have on my slides that I personally share are quotes. That's why I have so many slides. When you're doing quotes, people really like, especially in different settings like Women's Conference, Education Week, they want to take pictures of those slides. Now, this last time when I was doing the President Nelson talks, I did not want to do 62,000 slides. So I simply put at the beginning, I said, most of my quotes today are coming from these 2 talks from President Nelson. And if it's from a different talk, I will put that on the quote slide so that you'll know the talk that it's from. That helped tremendously because then I could just put a little section or a little piece and I didn't have to keep putting President Nelson. I didn't have to do a ton of slides. I would just say, check the talk because he gives a great couple of quotes in that section about that. And that's all I did. But that's a really good question. I would also make sure that your slides are absolutely necessary. So one thing that I like to do in each of my sections is I'll have say if I'm doing point number 1, say if it was for Taylor's, pause, and it would be pause. Maybe I'm doing it in a cool way. It's just one really cool color slide and then small font in the middle, pause, right, in white or something. Or I have a 2/3, 1/3 slide where I've got point number 1 is the gray or orange, it's the orange, and then the 2/3 of the slide is gray, and I have a quote there, or I have a picture that takes that gray section. It just is a picture to represent what I'm doing in that section. So if I'm talking about holy habits, I'd say number 1, holy habits, and then the picture on the side is a beautiful grove with the sun coming through. So it's a show, don't tell, and they remember the picture because we know if we can put a picture to what we're saying and sharing, then they'll remember it better. So that I'll do that maybe as that first entry, and you don't have to do it this way. This is just me linear thinking, Connie, that my style. I'll do that for the first point because I want them to remember that. And then I'll put a quote. The next slide is probably a quote. 3rd slide may be symptoms of, like, why don't we do, what are the obstacles to having holy habits? What are the feelings we're trying to get from holy habits, whatever it is. And I'll have maybe a bunch of different words, or I'll have some slides of different feelings, or I'll have a stat that says, if you do gratitude, here's the 6 things that you'll get from that: increase, better, blah, 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 blah. And that's a slide that will show that. There's a variety of ways to do that. And then maybe I'll have a slide that will have them, have you had a time where holy habits, have you found a holy habit that really nailed it for you, that it's kind of your go-to holy habit? Ask them, have them write them down. So it's just kind of, it's up there, but they're writing down, doing the activity. But sometimes if I really want them to have a thought-provoking question, either in the middle or at the end, I'll often at the end put, what is one way that you can make time for a holy habit today? And my question slides are always a certain color. So in the actual keynote, I usually have a certain color. I'll do gray and orange, and I have a certain slide that I'll do for quotes so that mentally they know, oh, that's a, oh, you bet, Diane, love you. They'll know that that's a quote. That's a quote. And I keep that same slide. And then I usually do white for, even though you don't want to do a white background slide, you generally don't want to do a white background, but because I have such colored slides, then the white just pops. But you'll notice when you go speak somewhere, usually the walls are what color? They're white. So you don't want to have a white slide and then a white wall that's all behind you. So you can choose a different one. There's other times I've done light gray in the back or something for the background of the question, thought-provoking question, or I'll do just a pop orange. But then at the end of that section, I'll have that thought-provoking question, have them do an activity, and then share it with each other while that slide is behind me. So in any given thing, I'm going to have 4, 5 slides, 6 slides, depending on how many quotes I use in that section. And in the section, it's really good to have a picture that's a show, don't tell, or a video. So when I was doing, I can't remember what talk it was for, but I was talking about marketing. Maybe it was for the book writing one for LDS PMA, but I was talking about your message and how you can market it effectively to your actual audience. So I showed the Old Spice. It was, you know, a BYU, so I couldn't show his whole chest. But I did the Old Spice, old commercial, just did a photo stat, just like a static photo of it, and said, anyone remember the Old Spice commercial from way below? Now I'm getting that way a long time ago, and people are like, oh, yeah, and they're laughing. Now it's in their brain. And I said, well, the BYU group was able to market it to their audience by taking it and spoofing it. And then I actually showed the video of the Old Spice commercial version parody of it, which is, look at your grades. I look back at my grades. You could have these grades, but and then it's so cute. So it's making that point, but now I've done it with humor. I've done it with video. I've done it with a purpose rather than just another slide or just talking at them, if that makes sense. So a really long answer to your very short question, but that's kind of a snapshot of how you can create a section that makes it a little bit more interesting. Not a ton of slides, but whatever slides you use are purposeful. Did that help at all? Or was I just yamming? Oh, and Brian Regan, so good. The big yellow one is the sun. We use his lines all the time. They're so funny. Anytime you can find something like that, like I just shared in, what keynote did I just do recently? I can't remember. Oh, was the Sorensen? No, it was to the BYU experience design class. I did a clip from The Pursuit of Happiness because they're getting ready to do interviews and selling themselves and blah, blah, blah. And how can they be articulate and distinct and succinct in what they're saying? And I said, you got to bring your personality. If you don't know the answer to a question, you don't know what they're saying, you just come up with something that is you and unique to you, but be ready for something like that. And then I showed that clip. If you guys remember when he went in for the interview, I remember he had been painting all night and he had tickets he had to pay for. So he came in and he had no shirt and he had paint all over him. And then the guy was like, okay, if you had someone who came into your office and someone said to you, this guy came in and he had no shirt on and you hired him, what would you tell this person? He said, well, he must have had a really nice pair of pants. And then that's the funny line. So again, got them laughing, got them connected to it, got to have that fingerprint phrase, blah, 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 made the point with a little, or nice abs, yeah. Made the point with that, with a video and a little clip, a little snippet. The trick on that, and I will remind you, is make sure your tech is spot on. We had tried to do that for, I think it was Life After Divorce, and the tech was just not working. And then I made sure I sent the clip, I sent it to their intern, I sent it to the lady who has it over me, I sent it in my PowerPoint. I also sent the actual clip for them to download themselves. I made sure that thing was taken care of because if you're showing a video, remember, it has to be embedded in the laptop that you're showing it from. You can't just put it on your little slideshow and then send it off to someone. It's got to be on the laptop that they show so it can pull it up. So anyway, I made sure that tech was set and it worked like a charm. Because when I got there, they had downloaded it onto this thing and then they were doing 2 screens and then he had it on the wrong screen. And I was going through that with him, making sure everything was where it needed to be to make sure that one clip works. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, when you have a quote, like, how do you, like, say, like, oh, this is so and so like quote. Like I don't know how to gracefully do it without sounding like so and so stated. Da, 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 da.
You kind of do it just like that as you're talking along, and you say something like, you know, we kind of underestimate the power of a pause in a day, but the CDC Center actually showed in this one study that it makes or breaks the day for women. And then you pop up that quote and it says at the bottom, you know, you got the quote and then you have the little dash or you have their name off to the side or in the middle, CDC 1987 study, blah, whatever. That's all you need to do is introduce it and then just have it on that slide.
So if it's like from like, I don't know, like Holland or something, and you just read it from Holland and
Elder Holland, you mean?
yeah, like if you have a quote from Elder Holland.
The way that they want you to do it for media is you don't say elder, you give them attribution. That means you put their name on it and you do Jeffrey R. Holland. And you can do just smaller, you always want to do their name in smaller font. So say you've got 48 point, 46 point font, then you'd want to do 42 or 44 of their name. And you can put it in the middle or to the side. And if the quote is too long, you don't want to go more than 2 slides for a quote. Just get to the meat of it. Or introduce the quote first and then just get to the meat of it that hits on the slide. And if you do that, then just put the quote on the slide with dots and ellipses at the bottom, and then continue on with an ellipses, the rest of the quote, and then Jeffrey R. Holland. But they don't put elder, just Jeffrey R. Holland, but definitely just attribute and say, you know, Jeffrey R. Holland says, blah, 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 blah. You just, that's all you need to do to transition into it.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome. Okay, a couple of things I wanted to share with you today. If you have anything else, you just raise your hand or unmute or something like that. Just in the remaining time that we have, just want to remind you to continue this week to refine, finalize that keynote and send me a 5-minute video and watch Speaker One Sheet and get the gigs. If you're done with that, move on to tech, timing, and slides. Or, oh, no, sorry, I'm switching that because there's like 3 of you that still need to finish your keynote, and there's a couple more that really need to refine it and feel like you're set. So I don't want to go to tech, timing, and slides yet. We'll bump that 1 more week and we'll switch it with the speaking on the spot, which is taking that keynote and learning how to speak it on TV, radio, podcast interview, all of that, being able to just plug and play with that keynote content. So you don't need to have it necessarily finished you do need to have it finished for next week, but you don't need to have it like it's all in gloss and gold and whatever. We're going to be able to take that content and be able to practice doing that on the spot. So we'll do a little sample interview with your content next week and you won't know who I'm going to choose. So be prepared. Give you that heads up. All right. For this week, things that I wanted to share were on getting the gigs. Just a couple of thoughts and tips on getting the gigs. First one is go after the organization that you want and be unapologetic. Now, don't be annoying, but be unapologetic. That means be your bold self. I love that Katrina said to Michelle at the retreat, where Michelle was like, well, I don't know if I should be talking so much about my book. And Katrina said, well, if you don't, who will? And I love that. If you're not going to talk about your keynote or let people know that you have this keynote, who will? So first and foremost, you need to let people know that you speak. And then second, you need to offer to speak or say, hey, I would love to speak for your organization. So those 2 things for the letting people know that you speak in your conversations. If someone's talking about this and you say, oh, you know what? That's so crazy. I actually speak about that. And then add on or move on to the outcomes. And you know what? I have found that women struggle with blah, 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 and they just need help to know how to do X, Y, and Z. And it's amazing how fast they're able to do that. Can you see how conversational that is? You're not saying, I speak about that. And the 3 points that I speak at are, and I can actually come and do it for you for this amount. We don't do it that way. We just do more conversational, where you're observational about this thing that this person's talking about. You know that women just don't value self-care. You know what? I actually speak about that. Or you could say, you know what? You are absolutely spot on. I speak about that. And I have found when I'm talking to a group of women, there's only 20% that intentionally take time for self-care in a given day. No wonder we're all so stressed out. But the crazy thing is when I teach them a few tools and tips to do, the light bulb goes on and I get these emails from women who are saying, I can't believe it. My day is totally changed because I did this 15-minute pause. It's crazy. Do you see the difference? Now someone is listening to that and going, gosh, what is it that you teach them how to do? And it's almost like you've done a little discovery call with them right there. So let them know that you speak, and then be your bold self. Do not be shy about offering to speak about it, and go after those places that would likely want you to speak. So when Life After Divorce first asked me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were doing the Life After Divorce conference, and someone had reached out to me and said, hey, we'd love to have you speak. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. Well, then it was COVID. So it was probably 2020 that COVID hit and they had to cancel it. Then the next year, I think that was last year then, or the year before. Anyway, whatever. The next time that they went to do it, I did not get contacted. And I happened to see it on a thread on one of my things that said, hey, Life After Divorce is coming, blah, blah, blah. We're excited to have this conference. And I went, so I could have been like, they didn't pick me. They don't like me. But I said, no, I'm going to be that person and that annoying person to find out why they didn't contact me. So I reached out, I called and I said, hey, I noticed that you had this Life After Divorce. You had asked me to speak earlier. Did you still need me to speak, or is that something that you didn't need anymore, right? You're just giving them that option and making it a soft inquiry. And she said, they changed chair people and they just put this onto me. I mean, I'm no longer doing this. The other gal is doing it, but I can reach out to her, and I would totally love to let her know that you would love to speak. That would be fantastic. So she reached out, this gal reached out to me, and boom, I was on the list for Life After Divorce. And then they invited me to come speak in the fall one when they were going to do it in the next spring. They did it earlier and they invited me to speak. So I was glad that I had reached out. So now I was on their radar. Same thing with the Sorensen Center. And I've mentioned that before. I was shameless about it. I was like, I love your vision. I love what you're doing. I'd love to volunteer my time. What do you need? And then they asked me to speak for the first one. And I did that gratis. And I was like, absolutely. And then they asked me to speak for the next one. I said, my speaking fee is blah, blah, blah. I would love to speak for you. Love that last experience. Here's the things that we need to do in order to make that happen. And they were like, great, spot on. So yeah, go after those gigs. So let them know and then go after the organizations that you want. Lamira.
Okay, so a thought that I had, a learning that I had this week was, that's why social media is important, is that if I'm not talking about this, then people don't know I don't talk about it, right? And I'm not credible. And so I found that as I started talking about it, it came out naturally for me. I was like, obviously this is my story, right? This is what I need to talk about. But then that way, if they go look me up, they can see that I might have 4 tips to do this, 4th, one way that you can help somebody in loss. And then that way, when they come see that they see what I'm talking about. And then they see that I actually have experience with it, if that makes sense. So that's just another way to practice it.
So true. And I love that. That's why it's important. Anytime that you speak somewhere, you put pictures of it on social media. When you go there, I talked about this last time, you find an ally, you find someone that can take a picture or two for you. Even Studio 5 yesterday, that's what I did I went in and they had a new intern and I was like, is it okay? Can you just take 1 or 2 pictures? That's all I need. And she was like, yeah, you bet, no worries. Because those pictures keep solidifying your credibility that you're a speaker. And that goes for, if you're not on LinkedIn, we will have a training in a little bit on LinkedIn if you need more on that. But LinkedIn is where speakers are. So LinkedIn is a place that you're going to want to post, and it's not the same as your social media posts. LinkedIn is a professional place. It's your business card. It's I'm sitting here and telling you why I am credible. I'm going to give you value. I'm going to give you wisdom, pearls of wisdom. I'm going to really be like, we're going to lunch for the first time and I am establishing that I am an expert in this. And I'm going to share with you some great stuff that you're going to walk away and go, this gal knows what she's talking about. So LinkedIn is a really important place for you to play and to play professionally. So we'll talk about that another time, but I love that. Was there anything else I wanted to say on that? So, the last thing is we have information on the modules on this. So you'll see more on this, but it's on the CRM. And we have different modules from different people who shared. One of them shared 3 different ways you could CRM, and that's your customer relation management system, which means you're just going to have a way to track the places that you spoke, how many people attended, what was the result, what was the contact person, who were they, what was their contact information, what was the thing, your topic that you talked about, your keynote, and do a link to it so you can find it in the Google Drive again. You're going to want to have, and we have all that in the modules, but you're going to want to have some way of recording this information. Even if you just go on like a Word doc or a Google Doc and just start writing it down, you want to have this information, because then you can go back in a year and see if they want you to speak again. It's a great way to have a build-up relationship with these people. You say, hey, I've got a new keynote. Do you have a conference coming up? I would love to share. I remember last time we had a great experience, and then you pop in that testimonial of someone that said, oh, it was fantastic. I can't wait for them to speak again, and say, I would love to do something for you. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'd love to connect with you. That's just a really important key. Anything else on that? We're going through a lot today. All right, I have given security to Sweet Lemire. If you want to pop it up, I'm sharing with you today while you're doing your keynote. Sometimes one of the hardest pieces of a keynote is the title. Anybody struggle with the title before? It's like, yeah. So I just had that struggle with my stake release study thing this Saturday, and I appreciate your help. This comes from Michelle Villalobos. I did her coaching program, and she has given me permission to be able to share this. But it's not supposed to say blog title templates. I'm so sorry, Lemira. I had said it's speaking title.
I didn't have a name for it, so.
I sent it. Did you not see it? I said 90 possible speaking titles.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'll change it.
Did you see that? I'm so sorry. I sent that, and I said, I think there's 90, because I went through and I counted them, but I think there's 90. But anyway, these were blog titles that she said you can use as speaking titles, and they're so, so good. So if you want to scroll up just a little slowly, you can see some of these right there. We'll just stop right there. So you can see what's better, this or that, how to, without the number, like the 3 most effective ways to. If you go on the right-hand column, and if you go down, I don't know if you can see my little marker, the secret will change your life. The number of stunning examples of the one thing that is blah, 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 affecting your bottom line. So these are all really great ways to find a new, fresh title. So this is something you can just use. It's handy. I use it. I'll go back and say, jumpstart your something with how long until you blah. I will teach you to be X, Y, and Z in 35 minutes or 55 minutes or whatever. How to speak even if you aren't a speaker, or how to speak even if you can't open your mouth, whatever. So this is just a great little handout and a little handy tool for you to be able to try to get some new cool things. You can go ahead and stop share. Just some ideas for you to be able to get some title ideas and something that's a little bit different, maybe a little unique. And we also have in one of the modules, we can put that in the WhatsApp. There's also a website that we can have you go to that you check your title. And if you put your title in there, it will give you a percentage of if it's 90% great, if it's 75% great, if it's 42% great. You'll just type in your title, and then you can keep doing different iterations of your title and see which one gets the best response from that website. And that's another super helpful tool. And we have it in one of the modules. I just don't remember which one it was, but we'll find it and we can put it in the WhatsApp. But it's so good. And just know when you go on to that website, if you get maybe 75% of it's a great title, 75% great, that's awesome. That particular website, you can rarely get like a 92, 98%. So if you're getting anywhere between 75, 85, you've got a great title that will really nail it. And you'll find that a lot of times you have to include your outcomes. So it'll include 3 steps to, 5 ways to, and then you're going to have those outcomes. I noticed that people really like the title for the talk that I'm doing on Saturday, to understand, use, and increase your covenant power. That they really liked that. Yep, we'll have her put it in the WhatsApp. They really liked that clean lines of, I know I'm going to learn how to understand it, use it, and increase my ability to have more of it in this talk. Having those outcomes is always a great idea. If you can put it in there, that will tell them exactly what they're going to get, and they can make a really good decision. Other times you can do really poppy titles, and those are fun. You just do take a risk. So if you have a fun, snappy title, I encourage you to put a subtitle. So for my book, Faithful, Fit, and Fabulous, they chose it, not me, but Faithful, Fit, and Fabulous, 8 weeks to blah, 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 blah. And that gave that subtitle to be able to say, this is what you're actually going to learn in this book, even though I said Faithful, Fit, and Fabulous. So you'll know exactly what you're going to get. Does that make sense? Yay. All right. Any last thoughts or questions? Homework for next week is watch those modules if you haven't yet, the speaker one sheet, the get the gigs, and then speak on the spot. If you want to watch that module, speak on the spot. That's what we'll do next week. We'll do some impromptu interviews. So I do need to have your keynote outline. Even if it's super, super, super rough, I need to have your keynote outline so I can choose some of those points and I can say, okay, we're going to talk about this point right here. I'm going to do an interview, mock interview with you and a couple of questions, and you can speak on the spot. So all you really need is that keynote outline, but I encourage you to make it as final as you can because we're getting to the downhill stretch. We only have 4 weeks left. Then we have a week of exit interviews, and then we graduate that next week. So you actually have a sort of bonus buffer 2 weeks if you need to like get everything finished and wrapped up. But I don't really want to tell you that so you don't like rely on it. But we will graduate on May 24th. So I know you can do this. You've got this. 11th hour, it's fine. That's sometimes when we are at our absolute best. Don't stress it. And if you need, Marco me with what you've got and any questions that you have, I'm super happy to help. That sound like a plan? Super proud of you ladies. It is birthing a keynote baby. That really is what it is. And since Sarah's, you know, doula, this should be good for her. But I'm just saying it really, really is. And that's why it's maybe on the 5th child, you're getting that keynote that you're like, ah, I birthed these 4 babies for you because you're the golden child. All right. I needed to myself. Lamar, I don't have a good track record with birds. Oh no. Maybe we'll just talk about creating. We'll just create it. You ladies are awesome. I love you. Let me know if you have any questions or challenges. We're here to help. Mwah. Love you.